From Adam to Noah. Let us begin at the very beginning, when the world was new. In the quiet stillness, God created the first man, Adam. He was formed gently from the dust of the ground, and life was breathed into him. Adam opened his eyes and found himself in a beautiful garden called Eden. It was a place filled with soft breezes, bright flowers, and tall trees whose leaves whispered softly. Adam was not alone for long. God saw that it was not good for him to be by himself. So from Adam's side, God made a helper and companion, a woman named Eve. Together they enjoyed the garden. They knew the sound of the birds, the warmth of the sunlight, and the sweet taste of many fruits. Everything was peaceful and good. In the garden, Adam and Eve were given one clear instruction. They could eat from any tree except for one, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It was a quiet command, tenderly given, meant to guard their happiness. But one day a quiet tempter came, clever and whispering. The serpent asked Eve if it was true that God had told them not to eat from any tree. Eve answered that they could eat from all, except the one in the middle, or they would die. The serpent's voice was soft, planting doubt and curiosity. "You will not die," it said, "but your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." Gently, Eve reached out and took the fruit. She tasted it, then gave some to Adam. And suddenly everything felt different. Their eyes were open to something new, a deeper knowledge, but also a new awareness of sadness and fear. They wrapped themselves in leaves, feeling shy and uncertain. When God came to walk in the garden, they hid, feeling their hearts pounding softly. God called to them, and they answered hesitantly. The garden was still beautiful, but the world now felt a little heavier. God spoke to them with care, explaining the consequences of their choice, the pain and hardship that would now be part of their lives. Even so, God did not turn away. Instead, God clothed them with soft garments, a gentle sign of care, and sent them to live outside the garden. It was a new beginning, different from before. Outside Eden, Adam and Eve learned to grow food and build their lives, always carrying the memory of the garden's quiet peace. As time passed, Adam and Eve had children. Their eldest sons were Cain and Abel. Cain worked the soil, planting crops, while Abel tended sheep. One day they brought offerings to God. Abel's offering was accepted with kindness, but Cain's was not. This made Cain's heart heavy and restless. God spoke gently to Cain, telling him to be careful with his feelings. But Cain's anger did not settle. In a moment of sadness and confusion, Cain hurt Abel deeply. It was the first sorrow in the world, a quiet pain that echoed slowly. God spoke with Cain again, full of sorrow but still patient. A quiet reminder of his actions and a protection as he wandered the earth. Cain moved away and started a family, and his descendants lived in various places. Meanwhile, life continued. Adam and Eve had other children. People spread across the land, and generations came and went. Names and stories were passed down slowly, like a soft wind carrying leaves. One son, Seth, was born to Adam and Eve after Abel's passing. A gentle gift, some say. A quiet hope for what was to come. Seth's children and grandchildren lived in the world, and over time people grew more numerous. Yet, as years passed, the world's story grew more complex. People began to stray from the gentle rhythms of the garden. The Bible does not tell us every detail, but it shares that in those days the world became full of much sorrow and trouble. People grew restless, and their hearts often turned away from the quiet peace God once gave. There is a mention of Nephilim, sometimes called giants, who lived on the earth. The exact nature of these beings is uncertain. Some say they were mighty people from older days, but we do not know for sure. The stories around them are whispered lightly, like unsure echoes from a distant time. At that time, the sons of God noticed the daughters of men. The stories say they married and had children, but the reasons and nature of these unions are gentle mysteries, not fully explained. As the world filled with more people, the hearts of humans became heavy with sorrow and pain. The Bible tells us that God saw the earth was filled with violence and grief. Every thought of human heart was often not good. This brought a deep sadness. In the midst of this troubled world, there was a man named Noah. He was a man who walked quietly with God and found favor in his eyes. Noah's heart was tender and gentle, seeking to live in peace, even when the world around him was full of strife. Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Together, they lived in a time when the earth was changing. The Bible says that Noah was a man of righteousness, blameless among his people. How he kept his heart so pure is a quiet wonder, a soft light in a darkening world. God spoke to Noah one day with gentle but serious words. He shared a plan to cleanse the earth because of all the sorrow and violence. It was not an easy plan, but a restful pause for the earth to heal. Noah listened carefully and obeyed, trusting quietly. God instructed Noah to build a large ark, a safe place made of wood, with rooms inside all designed thoughtfully. Noah worked slowly and steadily, cutting and joining pieces, creating a refuge that would float gently on the waters. He was told to bring into the ark pairs of every living creature, 2 of every kind, so life could continue. Birds, animals, and creeping things, all were invited to shelter in this resting place. It would be a time of waiting, a soft gathering. Noah's family joined him. His wife and his sons' wives became companions in this quiet labor. Together, they prepared for the days ahead, their voices mingling with the sounds of hammer and saw, and with quiet conversations filled with hope. Outside, the world continued as always, but there was a strange stillness in the air. The sky's mood shifted gently even as the animals began coming down from their habitats, guided by a calm yet steady hand. Though the story of exactly how the animals came to Noah is not fully detailed, it paints a picture of trust and gentle care. One can imagine the quiet footsteps, the flutter of wings, the soft breathing of creatures, all finding their way to safe shelter. Noah worked slowly and carefully, listening to the sounds around him, feeling the patter of rain beginning softly. The days blended gently into each other, work, rest, preparation, a rhythm calming the heart. And then, as the last animals found their places, the skies opened. Rain began to fall, softly at first, then strengthening. The waters rose slowly, covering the earth in a soft embrace. The ark floated steadily, carrying Noah, his family, and the animals away from the changing world. Inside the ark, the days were quiet and calm. Noah's family cared for the animals gently. The sounds of the creatures, the chirping, the breathing, mixed with the rhythmic tapping of rain on wood, creating a lullaby of sorts. Outside, the waters covered hill and valley, covering the earth's surface like a vast resting place. The story tells us the rain fell for 40 days and 40 nights, a long, slow cleansing. The days inside the ark passed with a gentle routine, feeding animals, tending the family, offering quiet prayers, and listening to the soft song of raindrops. The world outside was still, resting. After those many days, the rain stopped, and the waters began to recede, slowly and softly. The ark came to rest on a mountaintop. Noah sent out a raven, which flew back and forth. Then a gentle dove was sent, searching for a resting place. The dove returned at first, but later came back with an olive leaf in its beak, a quiet sign of peace, a whisper of hope, that the earth was healing beneath the waters. Noah and his family waited patiently for the land to become fully visible again. And when it was safe, they opened the ark's doors and stepped out into the new world. It was a world washed clean, fresh with promise. The sky was clear, the grass soft underfoot, and the air smelled sweet. Noah built an altar and offered thanks, a gentle gesture of gratitude. The story from Adam to Noah is a slow river, with moments of deep calm and sorrow. It is a tale about beginnings, choices, and hope wrapped in trust. The earth had changed, but gentle care remained, ready to blossom again. We pause here, at this quiet new beginning, holding softly the stories yet to come. The air was still and crisp after the flood, carrying a sense of new beginnings. The world, washed clean by rain and waters deep and wide, now lay beneath a gentle sky, painted in soft hues of dawn. Noah stepped onto the earth, his feet touching the softened ground with gratitude. Around him, the animals emerged from the ark's shelter, stretching paws, wings, and trunks, their eyes bright with cautious hope. Noah's family moved with careful steps, silent in their wonder. The landscape stretched endlessly, vast and verdant, alive with the fresh scent of sprouting grass and blooming flowers. The mountains, once hidden beneath floodwaters, now stood strong, ancient and steady, watching over this renewed world. The days following the flood were gentle and full of quiet discovery. Noah would walk the edges of the ark's resting place, listening to the soft rustle of new growth and the distant songs of birds. The earth beneath his hands was rich and dark, promising life and restoration. Around him, his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth began to explore, their curiosity weaving through the trees and streams that had burst forth since the waters ebbed. Together they began the work of sowing seeds, planting roots into the fertile soil. Slowly, the earth answered them with shoots and blossoms, a subtle echo of the world before the flood, yet fresh and vibrant in its own rebirth. Noah watched their eager hands, and in his heart grew a quiet hope, a whisper that life, though tested and tried, would go on. Each evening, as the light dimmed, the family gathered around the altar Noah had built. He raised his voice in soft prayer, words carrying thanks for survival, for the shelter of the ark, and for the chance to live anew. These moments were peaceful, wrapped in the warmth of shared faith and the stillness of twilight. God's promise lingered in the sky, a radiant bow, arched high and glowing gently with colors that seemed to hum with life. It was a reminder, never again would the earth be destroyed by flood. This covenant, bright and calm, settled like a protective veil over the world and those who walked upon it. Days turned into months, and with each passing season, Noah's family grew into their roles as caretakers of this restored earth. They learned from the animals, watching how each creature moved with purpose and grace. Shem, the eldest, spoke softly to the animals, his voice a steady current of kindness. Ham explored the forests with keen eyes, learning the language of leaves and streams. Japheth, with quiet strength, built shelters and pathways, crafting spaces where life could thrive. Through it all, Noah remained a gentle guide, his presence a steady anchor. He told stories to his sons under the evening stars, tales of the world before the flood, of laughter and sorrow, of guidance and grace. These stories wove lessons deep into their spirits, seeds that would grow with them. One evening, as the sky shimmered with the slow pulse of twilight, Noah paused by the altar. The bow in the sky was clear and glowing, a bridge of calm after the storm. His heart was full of a quiet peace, a soft melody that hummed beneath the surface of all things. In that stillness he understood. Though the earth would face trials anew, it rested now in the care of those who loved it. Life, fragile and fierce, was his charge to protect. The new world was theirs to nurture, its story just beginning anew. And with gentle hands and hopeful hearts, they stepped forward, ready to meet the days ahead. The days that followed felt like the turning of a great page, each dawn's soft light heralding fresh promise. Watching the gentle mist drift over the earth, softening the edges of this new world. The quiet was profound, a stark contrast to the roaring floodwaters that once swallowed the land. Each breath he took was imbued with the crisp purity of a world reborn. Shem, Ham, and Japheth moved through the fields with curious hands and hopeful hearts. They touched the tender shoots pushing through the soil, marveling at how life could return in such delicate persistence. Their laughter mingled with the morning chorus of birds, as if the earth itself breathed in their joy and exhaled peace. The animals had begun to settle into rhythms of their own. The lion's steady gaze softened, the elephant's slow, deliberate steps echoed through the forests, and the deer leapt lightly across the meadows, unburdened by the memories of the deluge. Noah watched them with a gentle reverence, grateful for each heartbeat that beat alongside his own. Together the family tended the land. Seeds became more than just kernels of potential. They were gifts entrusted to their care. With measured hands, they planted rows of grains, trees, and fruits. Each seed was a quiet promise, a testament to resilience and time. The soil welcomed them, cradling the tiny life, drawing it upward toward the sun. Evenings found the family gathered once more by the altar, the simple stones warmed by the fading amber light of day. Noah's voice was steady and soft when he spoke of creation, of the journey that had brought them here. His stories were more than memories, they were lessons wrapped in quiet grace. He spoke of the flood not as an ending but as a beginning, a cleansing of old wrongs, a chance for new harmony. His children listened with rapt attention, understanding the weight of the charge they bore. They were custodians of this renewed earth, stewards for a future yet unseen. The rainbow, arcing gently across the retreating clouds, was a quiet sentinel above them. Its colors were muted yet vibrant, a celestial vow painted across the sky. It was a reminder that storms may come, but the earth would endure. There was a sacredness in this covenant, an unspoken promise woven through the very fabric of existence. Time moved gently then, each day building upon the last with the quiet rhythm of growth. Shem, thoughtful and steady, began observing the stars, mapping the heavens with a reverence taught by Noah. Japheth's hands were skilled in crafting. He shaped wood and stone, tools and shelters rising from patient endeavors. Ham, with lively eyes and nimble fingers, learned the language of the animals, finding harmony in their movements and sounds. Through these labors, they discovered the balance of life. They understood that the earth was neither conquered nor tamed, but held in delicate trust. Each creature, each plant, was a thread in the whole tapestry, and their care was a sacred duty. Noah's heart was often filled with quiet pride and gentle melancholy. The world was new again, but the lessons of the past were etched deep within him. He taught patience, humility, and hope, not as distant ideals but as daily practices. In their small acts, the family honored the memory of what once was and paved the way for all that could be. The seasons began their ancient dance. Rain came softly at times, washing the land in gentle showers. Sunlight warmed the days, coaxing blossoms from bark and leaf. The fields flourished, green and full. Limes and herbs grew wild and generous, their scents weaving through the air, a quiet celebration of life's persistence. One morning, as the first light stretched across the horizon, Noah walked beside a small stream, carving its path through the land. He knelt and cupped the cool water, feeling its pure flow over his hands. A deep peace rested in this simplicity, a connection to the years beyond memory and the days yet to unfold. He imagined generations yet to come, children of his sons, walking these fields, learning the stories of grace and resilience that had brought them here. The promise of the rainbow was not just for them but for all, a timeless covenant woven through the world's breath. Each evening, as stars blanketed the sky like 1,000 gentle eyes, the family found solace in the quiet. They spoke softly, shared stories, and dreamed of the future. The earth beneath them thrummed with life, rich and abundant, a testament to patience and care. In these moments the world felt whole. The scars of the flood remained hidden beneath the green, but hope had taken root, growing firm in the hearts of Noah and his sons. And so, beneath the watchful gaze of stars and sky, the family embraced their sacred trust. They were the keepers of this new dawn, the gentle gardeners of the earth's fresh breath, a legacy of resilience, love, and light, whispered softly through the winds of time. As the days grew longer and the seasons turned, the bond between Noah's family and the earth deepened. Their hands, once untested in the ways of the land, now moved with steady familiarity, planting, tending, harvesting, each action an echo of ancient rhythms. The soil, rich and soft beneath their feet, welcomed their care like an old friend. Life, in its quiet persistence, unfolded around them. Buds appeared, leaves unfurled, and the gentle hum of insects filled the air like a soft song. The family's knowledge slowly expanded, blending the wisdom of past generations with lessons freshly learned through observation. Noah watched his sons as they developed their gifts with quiet joy. Shem's eyes, always turned skyward, could trace the paths of stars as maps, each constellation a story suspended against the velvet night. Under Shem's guidance they began to mark the passing months, noting the first blossoms of spring and the fading light of autumn, learning to read the subtle language nature offered them. Japheth's hands, roughened by craft, shaped wood and stone. Forming tools for planting and fortifying their shelter, he built not only for function but with a patient artistry. His creations brought safety and comfort, shaping a home that was more than mere shelter, a sanctuary crafted with intention. The wooden walls around them seemed to breathe with the land itself. Ham's quiet connection with the animals brought another kind of harmony. He observed their patterns, their calls filling the quiet spaces. Through careful attention, he came to understand creatures both great and small, how birds nested and sang, how beasts moved with purpose across the land. With gentle hands and patient spirit, Ham nurtured this bond, teaching early kindness that was woven from respect rather than dominion. Noah, the father and teacher, continued to weave lessons into the fabric of their daily lives, not through harsh commands, but in soft stories and unspoken examples. Humility was not a distant ideal, but a living practice, found in the act of waiting for the rain, in the steady return of the sun, in the way seeds must rest beneath the earth before sprouting. Patience grew in their hearts as they embraced the slow unfolding of time, and hope, ever fragile yet persistent, became a lantern guiding them forward. Each morning, the family stirred with the gentle light spilling across the horizon. Dew clung to leaves and grass, sparkling like tiny jewels, cleansing the earth anew. Their feet pressed into earth softened by night's rain, the scent of fresh soil, mingled with herbs growing wild at the borders of their land. This connection, the smell, the touch, the visual harmony, grounded them and filled them with quiet gratitude. At midday, shadows shifted and the warmth settled deeper into the ground. Noah often sat beneath the shade of a growing tree, its branches filtering soft sunlight, remembering the flood. But memories were no longer heavy weights. They were anchors, preserving wisdom and caution. The rainbow, vivid and constant across the sky, renewed as frequently as the morning, was their silent reminder. Chaos may come, but new life always follows. In these gentle cycles, the family's story stretched across the land, like whispered promises to the future. Their children, born in this vast new world, learned to walk with care, to speak softly, to observe keenly. Parenting was an art of guiding with light and tenderness. Noah found his heart swelling in these early footsteps, in the small voices asking questions, in the wide eyes drinking in the world's beauty. Evenings brought the family together once more. Flames leapt softly as the fire caught the night's breath, casting shifting shadows on faces turned toward the hearth. Noah's voice, calm and steady, would begin again, the stories, the ancient beginnings retold with reverence, each telling a thread linking them to what was and what will be. The flood was no longer just a tale of devastation, it was a story of renewal, of sacred trust, and the power of second chances. The silence between words was as important as the stories themselves. It allowed the family to reflect, to feel the presence of the ancestors, of the earth, of all living things intertwined. It was in these moments that hope grew steady and strong, wrapping them like a gentle cloak through the night's dark reaches. The stars above stretched quietly across the heavens, distant yet near, a grand canopy holding the future. Noah's health, marked by years of toil and wisdom, began to slow. His spirit remained vibrant, illuminated by the deep peace he had nurtured in his family and home. His thoughts often dwelled on the fragile web of life they tended. He understood deeply the trust bestowed upon them, not simply to survive, but to honor and protect the living world in all its fragile beauty. He looked upon his sons and their children, their faces bright with promise and curiosity, and felt the weight of his legacy, not in possessions or monuments, but in the living breath of the earth they would continue to cherish. Against the horizon's soft glow, Noah spoke seldom but with great clarity, that every breath, every root, every creature was a part of this sacred whole. To care for one was to care for all. In moments alone, Noah wandered the wild edges of their home, the quiet places where trees stood ancient and proud, where streams murmured secrets only time could understand. The world seemed reborn and endlessly mysterious, full of wonder waiting patiently to be seen anew each day. He found solace there, in the interwoven beauty of water and stone, light and shadow. One evening, as the first stars blinked awake, a gentle wind carried the scent of rain. The family gathered once more, smoke curling above the altar from dried herbs, the flicker of flames warm against the cooling air. Noah spoke softly of resilience, how every challenge had sculpted their spirits, how the earth itself did not rush, but moved in steady patience. He urged them to remember that their stewardship was a lifelong offering, made one small act at a time. That healing was not sudden, but continuous, unfolding as surely as dawn comes after night. Though his voice was tired, it bore the strength of countless stories, and the simmering flame of hope that would burn long after his own days waned. As the night deepened, the family quieted, each soul wrapped in the gentle comfort of belonging. They slept beneath the watchful gaze of stars, beneath the endless sky that held within it all beginnings and all endings. Outside, the earth breathed softly, alive with promise, cradled in the hands of those who knew the sacredness of life. And so, the story from Adam to Noah found rest, not in finality, but in a tender pause full of light, waiting to be continued by those who would walk the earth after, carrying forward the sacred trust of care, resilience, and love. As the seasons continued their gentle cycle, the family remained intertwined with the rhythms of the earth. Each dawn brought new light, a soft arrival, that painted the sky with hues of quiet gold and cautious pink. In these moments, Noah found himself reflecting once more on the fragile balance of life, the delicate dance between destruction and growth. Night and dawn, his children grew stronger, their feet more certain against the ground beneath them. They moved carefully, with a reverence born from stories and teachings, from the memory of what had been lost and the hope for what can still be. Their hands learned the tender art of mending, whether it was a broken branch or a bruised fruit. Each act of care was a prayer, a small thread in the ongoing weave of healing. Noah watched quietly from the shade of a great tree, its leaves whispering ancient secrets in the soft breeze. There was a stillness now in his spirit, a calm that had come through years of watching, listening, and learning. He understood that time was no longer only measured by years, but by the quiet moments passed in kindness and thoughtfulness. At night, beneath a sky heavy with stars, the family gathered once again. Their voices were soft, almost a murmur, as they shared memories and hopes. The stories mingled with the gentle rustling of leaves and the far-off call of night birds. It was a sacred time when the past and the future seemed to meet, when the children's eyes sparkled with wonder and responsibility. Noah's hands, now marked with the years, moved with purpose as he pointed to the constellations overhead. He spoke of the cycles they represented, endless journeys, endless returns. Just as these stars circle the heavens, he said softly, we too must move thoughtfully through our days. Each step matters. His gaze was steady, filled with quiet conviction. The rainbows continued to appear after the rain, arcs of color that held the promise of balance. They were reminders not only of survival, but of the possibility that even after the deepest loss, life could be renewed. His family carried this knowledge in their hearts, a beacon against the uncertainties of the days to come. Noah's voice, though slowed by age, was imbued with a gentle strength. We are the keepers now, he would say, the stewards of this earth and all the creatures who share it with us. Our task is not easy, but it is sacred. We must listen always to the land, the water, the wind. His eyes would rest on each face, a transmission of trust and urgency. Sometimes the children would ask questions, simple, profound, about the world before the flood, and about what the future might hold. Noah's answers were always measured and thoughtful. The past is a whisper, he explained, but it guides us. The future is a seed we plant through our actions. He spoke of patience, of resilience, reminding them that the earth's healing would come slowly, like the steady rise of a river after drought. In the growing twilight, when shadows lengthened and the air cooled to a soft hush, Noah found moments for solitude. He wandered near the water's edge, tracing his fingers along the smooth stones, listening to the gentle lapping of the waves. These quiet walks were a form of communion, a way to renew his spirit and find peace within the vastness. Though his body grew frail, his mind remained sharp, filled with the clarity that comes from years of reflection. He thought often of the unity between all elements, earth, water, air, and fire, and the delicate thread that connected every living thing. This vision was a flame he nurtured carefully, passing it on like a precious ember to those who would follow. At times the family would sit in a circle on the soft earth, hands joined, hearts open. They would share their fears and hopes, their regrets and gratitude. These gatherings were a balm, strengthening their bonds and reminding them of their shared mission. Julian, Noah's eldest, echoing the lessons learned under his father's watchful eye. Together they planted trees, mended broken streams, and tended gardens that fed not only their bodies but their spirits. Each sapling was a promise, each healed patch of earth a testament to their commitment. The work was patient and steady, not rushed by the urgency of time, but guided by the deep rhythms of nature. As the cycle of years unwound softly, the family grew in harmony with the land. The footprints they left behind were gentle, careful impressions on the soil. They moved forward not as conquerors but as participants, humble and grateful for the chance to walk the path of renewal. Noah, in his quieter moments, would sit and watch the interplay of light and shadow, the dance of leaves in the wind. Nature's beauty was a constant reassurance, a reminder that amid all trials, there was always space for wonder and hope. When the time came for him to rest, surrounded by his family, there was no fear, only a serene acceptance. His final breath was a soft sigh, a gentle release into the quiet earth and the wide sky above. His legacy was not just in the stories told or the lessons shared, but in the living, breathing world he helped nurture. The family gathered close, holding one another in the stillness that followed. They spoke softly of the trust now passed to them, the sacred charge to care for the earth and all its creatures. In their hearts the rainbow remained, a silent, enduring promise of renewal, connection, and unwavering hope. With each new dawn they carried forward the wisdom of their forebear, the steadfast love that built their lives from the fragments of what had been. They stepped gently into the future, guided by the quiet light of resilience and the endless song of life's enduring renewal. In the quiet moments after Noah's passing, the family gathered beneath the soft glow of dawn. The air was crisp with the promise of a new day, and the earth beneath them felt alive with whispered stories. Seeds of faith and affection had been planted deeply, and though one life had gently closed, the garden of stewardship flourished still in the hearts of his children and their children beyond. The children, no longer small and uncertain, now stood with the calm of experience. They saw the land not as a possession, but as an entrusted gift. The hills, streams, and forests were their precious charge, much like the memory of their father, a living spirit urging them forward. From his teachings they grasped the delicate balance where life and death intertwine, where tenderness must lead in the ways of care. Each morning as the sun climbed to meet the waking sky, they moved thoughtfully across the earth. Their footsteps were gentle, mindful not to disturb the quiet pulse of life. When they pressed hands into the soil, it was a silent vow to nurture all roots that reached below. In the flutter of birdsong, they heard renewal. In the rustle of leaves, the wisdom of seasons turning endlessly from birth to rest and back again. The children began telling stories under shade trees, tales of great floods and skies painted in rainbows, of an old man who listened to the language of the stars, and of a promise etched in light for all to see. These stories bound them, as surely as the earth binds the water that runs through its veins, a thread woven with quiet hope. Together, they learned to read the signs of the land, the tilt of branches toward the sun, the softness of moss where springs emerged, the shapes of clouds drifting like slow, drifting dreams. They knew the vigor of the wildflowers, the enduring strength of oaks, and the ceaseless journey of rivers as guardians of life's renewal. As seasons passed, gardens sprouted beyond their home. Rows of food-bearing plants and wild herbs grew under patient hands. Every harvest was a gentle reminder that life must be given careful tending, that abundance comes slowly and with respect. The family's heart swelled with gratitude for these small, steady gifts. With the passing years, the family grew and dispersed, each member carrying the mantle of Earth's guardian wherever their paths led. In their communities, stories of the Great Flood became lessons about humility and reverence. Children everywhere learned of the rainbow's arch, not merely as a beautiful sight, but as a symbol of hope anchored in balance and renewal. Even as time deepened, the rainbows appeared, some broad and bold, others faint and fleeting, always as a quiet beacon. Those who remembered Noah's words took strength in this sign. Life, however fragile, endured in cycles that embraced both loss and growth, and the promise of new beginnings. In the cool twilight hours, elders would sit by fires and speak softly about the past, weaving Noah's wisdom into the fabric of future dreams. They reminded each other that their work was endless, a sacred trust handed down from the first caretaker to all who followed. And so the story continued. With every tree that grew tall, every stream that ran pure, every voice that honored the earth's tender balance. In quiet deeds and simple gestures lay the deep song of connection, a reminder that life's resilience is nurtured through patience, kindness, and an open heart. Through the gentle turning of days and nights, a legacy of stewardship blossomed in every corner touched by those who cherished the earth, and in this Noah's spirit remained, a steady flame guiding all who listened to nature's timeless call. With time, the world continued its gentle rhythm, shifting from one season to the next, and with it, new generations came into being. Children born to Noah's descendants grew up surrounded by stories whispered softly by fireside glow, and in the quiet hum of evening winds through leaves. These stories carried more than memory. They held alive a subtle understanding that life was a sacred tapestry of care. Among these descendants, some settled by flowing rivers, where the land was soft and yielding. Here, families worked the soil with reverence, feeling the heartbeat of the earth beneath their hands. They planted seeds not just for themselves, but trusting that the soil would offer its gifts in return. They learned the ways of water and weather, watching how clouds gathered slowly or gently parted to chase shadows across their furrows. Others journeyed toward the hills, where stones spoke of ancient times, and winds whispered secrets known only to birds. These seekers embraced the solitude and silence, finding comfort in the rustling branches and the steady pulse of roots deep underground. They lived simply, caring for wild creatures and weaving their lives with quiet respect for the untamed. Noah's teachings, like the soft light of dawn, reached beyond his own family. Travelers who heard the stories carried them on their lips and hearts to lands distant and unfamiliar. Wherever these stories traveled, they kindled a soft glow of hope and understanding. They reminded people that to live well was to live gently, to hold the earth as a precious, breathing thing. The rainbows painted across the sky remained ever present. Each shimmering arc was a breath of promise, a quiet assurance flowing through the sunlight and rain. Children would gaze upward after disappearing storms and find comfort in the silent colors, knowing that resilience and renewal were bound to the earth and sky alike. In time, the wisdom of the earth, handed down from Adam to Noah, braided itself into the fabric of daily life. Celebrations followed the cycles of planting and harvest, and rituals honored the stars that scattered their light across the nighttime velvet. People watched the moon wax and wane, sensing in its gentle transformations a reminder that change itself was sacred, an echo of the beginning of all life. The elders, keepers of memory and song, spoke softly of humility, the quiet strength found in knowing one's place within the great weave of creation. They taught patience as a form of love, that to rush was to risk breaking the fragile balance, but to wait with open heart was to honor the slow unfolding of all things. Children learned to listen to the call of birds at dawn, the murmuring of brooks, and the stories whispered by the wind through tall grasses. These sounds became prayer, a gentle keeping of the promise to respect and protect the land. With these lessons, stewardship was no longer a duty, but a dance, a daily rhythm that flowed from care and gratitude. Slowly, as generations passed and new faces appeared, some began to forget these fragile connections. Places grew quiet where once laughter rang free, but the stories of Noah and the great flood remained alive, in songs sung beneath the stars, in the sure flight of eagles across open skies, in the steadfast turning of the seasons. They offered a soft hand to those willing to listen. In the quiet moments before sleep, when the world seemed still, many felt the gentle stirring of Noah's spirit, like a breeze brushing through leaves. It was a reminder that the legacy of love for earth, for water, for sky was never lost, but simply waiting to be remembered, honored, and renewed. Thus the teaching continued, whispered on the wind, reflected in the shimmer of rainbows, and nurtured in the hearts of those who cared. The story from Adam to Noah was a story of life's deep resilience, of hope hinged on humility, and love expressed as care for all living things. As you breathe these words, may you find a quiet strength in the enduring promise beneath the vast sky, a promise sown with patience, humility, and the gentle touch of stewardship. The earth turns, the seasons flow, and the story carries on, ever unfolding, ever alive. As the sun seeped gently behind the hills, casting long shadows across the fields, the people gathered once more around the fire. The elders' voices softened, carrying the weight of stories that felt older than the wind itself. They spoke of days when the earth whispered secrets, and humans learned to tread lightly, guided not by the clamor of ambition, but by the quiet pulse of life surrounding them. In those earliest days, wisdom was not held in books or tablets, but in the hands that tilled the soil, in the eyes that watched the stars, and in the patience that tended a fragile seed. It was in the knowing that each river's song, each rustle of leaves was a message, a thread weaving together all beings in a vast, living tapestry. From the dwelling places along the water's edge, families would rise with dawn's first breath to bless the river. They would offer thanks, not in grand words, but in the gentle stirring of water and the planting of seedlings along the banks. Their work was simple, deep, and profound. To hold the land as a precious trust, inherited from those who came before, and to pass it unbroken to those who would come after. The hills were quieter, yet no less alive. There, children learned to move softly through forests, their ears attuned to bird calls and the rustle of small creatures in the underbrush. They learned that wild things thrived only when left undisturbed, and that true strength was often the strength to let go, to watch, to wait, to care from a distance. Noah's name echoed through time like a soft, steady drum beat. His teachings, of care, of renewal after great storms, of honoring promises, were carried on every breeze. In the villages, patterns of light and water, earth and sky were remembered through dance and song. These celebrations were not just acts of joy, but acts of reverence, binding community and nature in a sacred rhythm. The elders spoke often of humility, a quiet understanding that no one, no matter how wise or strong, could claim mastery over the earth. Instead, the greatest gift was to listen, to learn, and to serve. Patience was a gift too, teaching that growth takes time, but seasons turn in their own unfolding way. The children, wide-eyed and eager, learn these lessons through the simple acts of filling baskets with just the right harvest, or waiting for the perfect moment to plant. Yet the world was never static. Some forgot, some drifted from the paths marked by those ancient promises. But even in forgetfulness, the earth whispered reminders. The coming of storms stirred hearts to remember the lessons of resilience shared by Noah, the steady hope sown into every rainbow arc. The songs and rhythms never fully faded. They lingered between the branches, the flowing streams, the eager rising of new leaves. And so it was that the spirit of Noah was gently felt by all who cared to listen, not as a commanding voice, but as a tender presence, like a breeze brushing past a cheek, a quiet calm after the storm. It was a reminder of an enduring bond of love, love for the soil beneath their feet, for the water that sustained them, for the sky that watched over all. In quiet moments, children would look into the horizon and see rainbows arching toward the earth, colors bright and soft at once, a living symbol of hope reborn. And with these lingering colors came the promise that the story, far from ending, was ever woven through the days, through the cycles of nature, and the hearts open enough to hear its call. The legacy carried on in whispers and in song, nurtured not just by words but by the hands that planted trees, the eyes that treasured wild places, and the breath of community that held space for love and respect to grow. It was here, in these shared moments, that the story from Adam to Noah found its quiet, enduring home, an invitation to live gently, to tend wisely, and to hold fast to hope as the ever-turning earth breathed life anew. As seasons turned and years wove their quiet magic, the story of Adam to Noah lived not just in words, but in the breath of the earth itself. It was felt in the soft rhythm of rain on leaves, in the tender push of new shoots through rich soil, in the deep night's chorus of crickets and owls. Wherever people gathered, the ancient truths whispered and settled like dew, nourishing roots unseen but deeply known. In the village, the fire continued to glow as twilight descended, its amber light drawing faces close. The elders, voices steady and warm, spoke without hurry, each tale a careful thread in the ever-unfolding tapestry of life and care. From their lips, the lessons of patience and reverence were not commands but gentle invitations, to walk softly, listen deeply, and hold the world as a precious trust. With every dawn, children awoke to the dew's shimmer and the subtle music of the wind threading through branches. They learned not with hurried steps or loud commands, but through quiet watching, the way a bird hovered before settling, the slow unfolding of a leaf, the delicate threading of spider silk between twigs. These were their classroom. In these tender moments, respect for life took root, not as distant rule, but as a living, breathing experience. Communities continued their sacred dance with nature. Along the winding rivers, women and men gathered to release young trees into the earth, their hands marking each plant with care and blessing. The rivers, alive and flowing, sang their own stories, of journeys from mountain spring to boundless sea, of fish and stone and whispered secrets beneath the surface. Gratitude was spoken softly into the soil and water, an unbroken circle of giving and receiving. Noah's words echoed in the quiet spaces between seasons. They were a balm in times when shadows stretched long, and hearts felt the weight of challenge. Care for the earth was intertwined with care for one another, each act a promise renewed. When storms swept across the land, tearing and testing, people held tightly to these teachings. They remembered the rainbow's arc, thrown wide across the sky, a silent vow in brilliant color. In the hearth's glow, the elders reminded the young that humility was not weakness, but a deep strength. To wait with patient hands, to listen without rushing, to honor the slow unfolding of life. These were the keys to true wisdom. The earth, with all its rhythms, did not hurry or demand. It simply was. And so too were the people called to be steady, gentle, open. Yet it was not always easy to keep such sacred balance. Sometimes forgetfulness drifted in, like a quiet fog over a bright morning. People grew distracted by fleeting pursuits, or the tangled webs of their own desires. The land, sensitive and wise, did not forget. When reckless hands marred the soil or water, the earth's voice rose in tempests, in droughts, in silent retreat. These were not punishments but reminders, a call back to the path of care and respect. Through these trials, the spirit of Noah moved among them, a presence felt not as a power outside themselves, but as a gentle wellspring of hope and resilience within. It was in the shared meals broken under the open sky, in the clasped hands of neighbors, in the quiet prayers whispered for healing and renewal. This spirit was the thread that wove the people to each other and to the land, a living bond that time and change could not sever. Rainbows appearing softly after rain came to hold a sacred place in hearts, not mere colors scattered by light, but bridges, symbols of rebirth, of promises kept and promises to come. When the sky painted these arcs across horizons, children pointed with wonder, elders nodded quietly, and the whole village felt the hum of something enduring. It was the great rhythm of life, in all its hardships and joys, flowing onward. As the tales were told, the storytellers' voices grew softer still, like the settling of night after dusk. The fire, now low and warm, sent sparks drifting upward, each a tiny reminder of light held in darkness. The elders spoke of endings that fold gently into beginnings, of stories not closed but opening ever wider, like the unfolding petals of a flower kissed by dawn. The legacy from Adam to Noah was no longer just a past to remember. It was a living pulse, a breath shared by all who walked the earth with care. It whispered in the rustle of leaves, in the murmurs of waters, in the laughter of children playing beneath ancient trees. It called to every heart willing to listen, inviting each one to hold the world as a sacred trust, to nurture with hands and spirit alike. As the night deepened around the circle, the village rested wrapped in this quiet blessing, a world held gently, a story unfolding without hurry, an ever-present promise of life renewed. And in that stillness, the ancient wisdom lived on, timeless as the stars above, steady as the earth beneath, and wide as the sky embracing them all. Seasons continued to turn with quiet grace. To breathe, to listen, the village found comfort in these rhythms, grounding their hearts in the familiar cadence of Earth's steady pulse. Children learned early to watch the buds swell with promise, to trace the flight of birds as they journeyed across open skies. Such simple acts carried deep wisdom, reminders that life persists in its endless flow, weaving threads of continuity through every hand and heart. Among the elders, a gentle understanding grew that control is a fragile illusion, while trust in the natural order brings true strength. They often spoke softly of patience, a strength not born of haste or force but of surrender. Like the river that carves the stone not by anger but by persistence, so too must the people cultivate endurance, reshaping their lives in harmony with the land's subtle song. One evening, beneath a sky painted with the last light of sunset, a young mother cradled her sleeping child beneath the branches of a newly planted fig tree. The child's breath rose and fell in steady rhythms, a quiet echo of nature's own pulse. The mother whispered a blessing, inviting the tree to bear witness, to grow strong alongside the child, both nourished by the same soil and sun. In this intimate ritual, the promise of continuity shimmered, fragile yet unbreakable. Storms still came, reminders stitched with thunder and wind, yet the community met them not with fear or defeat, but with renewed resolve. From the shelter of their homes, they listened to the earth's voice in the crash of rain and sway of branches. They understood these moments as calls to humility, a reminder that the power to nurture surpasses the impulse to dominate. In quiet dawns, when mist curled like soft breath over the valley, children gathered near the river's edge. There they learned the ways of water, how it shapes the land, carries life, and renews the world with every gentle flow. Elders shared stories of the river's ancient journey, tales stretching back beyond memory, linking the waters to all life, from the first sparrow to the oldest tree. At times, when shadows lengthened and doubts crept like evening chill, the community found strength in shared remembrance. They recalled the quiet courage of Noah, who taught not just of survival but of sacred care, how tending to the earth becomes tending to ourselves. This wisdom was not written on stone or scroll, but sung in the rustling leaves and echoed in children's laughter carried on the wind. Beneath the heavens, rainbows arched as gentle bridges between sky and earth. Their colors whispered of promises held, of endings softer than the closing of an eye, and beginnings that rise anew with the morning light. These fleeting gifts became emblems of hope, tender reminders that every storm subsides into calm, every shadow yields to dawn. As the community grew in understanding, so too did their quiet rituals deepen. Each tree planted held blessings not only for those who walked before, but for those who would follow, children yet unborn, keepers of the earth's stories and its fragile wisdom, carried forward in soft footsteps along ancient paths. One afternoon, as the wind carried the scent of blooming jasmine, the eldest among them sat beneath a spreading oak. Surrounded by young faces filled with curiosity, the elder spoke with a voice like gentle rain. From Adam to Noah, the story is not merely about days past or lives lived. It is about awakening. Awakening to the sacred dance between life and earth, between breath and soil, between whisper and roar. To walk gently is to honor this dance. The children listened, wide-eyed, understanding in a way words could seldom capture. For in the quiet spaces between the elders' words, life itself was present. In the rustle of leaves, the hum of bees, the steady pulse of the earth beneath their feet. Night fell softly, folding the village in a cloak of stars. Under that vast luminous canopy, hearts beat in unison with the timeless rhythm of the world. The legacy from Adam to Noah breathes not in monuments or myths alone, but in the very act of living, attuning, caring, renewing, with reverence for the fragile beauty of each moment. And so the village rests, not as an end, but as a gentle pause before the next breath, the next planting, the next story told beneath the quiet watch of ancient enduring wisdom. The earth's song continues, endless and tender, inviting all who listen to join in its sacred melody.